Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Construct 101. Today we are going to take a look at the car behavior. So this is a behavior that I very loosely remember having played with for about 2 seconds back in the early days of Construct. I don't know anything about it, so I'm going into this pretty blind. I really don't know what to expect. I do know it's top down, that's about it. So let's have a quick look and see what it does. So as usual, select your object, behaviors, add a new behavior down to the movement section and car. I'm just going to right click and go to help on car and have a quick read at what this thing does or is capable of. The car behavior allows an object to accelerate head forwards, or to accelerate, I think that's a mistake there, to accelerate forwards and backwards and have steering. It also has a simple drift feature where the object can skid around corners. Oh, that's impressive. By pointing in a different direction than it's moving in. For an example of the car behavior, see the driving example in the start page, okay? By default, the object is controlled by the arrow keys, okay, but as usual, we can simulate movement, will bounce off any solid objects, solid behavior, on the angle of impact. Okay, so it's a simplified version of physics. That's all good because, I mean, you don't want unpredictability, so this is good. Okay. So drift recover. So I guess that's like when you drift and then the car goes ooh and recovers into a straight line. So that I think makes sense. If you've ever played a racing game, you know what I'm talking about. And yeah, it looks pretty self-explanatory. Says the person going into this having no idea what it's going to do. Okay, let's have a look. So as usual, I expect that the default is going to be to the right because that's how all objects act in here. So I assume that accelerate will be to the top. So the top arrow, yes, and it moves to the right. So what we're going to do as usual, so we're going to go into our blocky object and just spin it around just so you guys so I can illustrate this a little bit better. So now blocky is technically facing to the right. Imagine if this is a top-down face, okay? Now, if we press the up arrow and side arrow, he is going to spin around. So as you see, if I'm spinning around, it's almost like I'm doing a donut. And as I straighten out, you will see that correction. Did you see that correction there? Yeah. Okay, I can see what they're doing here. And that's quite an impressive feature for a default behavior, I have to say. By playing around with the settings a little bit more, I think that this could be built into something pretty decent. Really, really cool. Okay, so let's just slow down. And obviously it has, so if I accelerate, does it stop? Okay, cool, pretty simple. Now, let's have a quick look at the different settings here. We've got max speed, acceleration, that's pretty self-explanatory. Stir speed, so obviously that is how fast it's going to turn. Let's turn this up to 400 and see what happens. Drift recover and friction, I guess that's, yeah, that's slowing down and all that sort of thing. Let's turn it up to 1 and see how fast the car slows down. So if I now, okay, let's turn it up a little bit higher even. The amount of slowdown when hitting solids, I see, okay. So I guess it's only when it hits solids, so let's just turn it back to what it was. Set angle, default controls enabled. Okay. Set angle would be as usual. If I don't have it set, it's going to stay facing the same way. Yeah, as usual. But in this case, that's not what you want. If you have a top-down car, I guess if you were going for like a pseudo 3D type effect, and you could use the car behavior, then maybe that would be an option. But I don't know. We've never really done it. So Might have to test this out. This is definitely something that I'm going to look into for a game. Okay, so that's fun. As soon as you turn up the turning speed, that really, it already changes the feel entirely. So go, yeah. That correction is really cool, actually. I quite like that. Okay, so yeah, well, this behavior is pretty simple. There is not much to add here apart from the fact that this really requires you to make a game and, you know, experiment. One thing I am going to try is to see how it acts when you add the solids onto screen. But really, you know, you will want to, if you've got a car game in mind, something that you would like to make, that's a top-down racer or something, it really would pay off just to take this behavior, make a simple graphic for what you want to use, even if it's just a box, and in the size dimensions you want, and just really experiment with your track, you know, maybe having some grass which slows you down and things like differently. I mean, I'll just show you guys what I mean by that. It could easily be added. So let's add a couple of objects. No, we don't want to do that with the background. Let's just lock this layer again. And I'm just going to double click, go to sprite, and we're just going to add, as usual, a black square, not like that, fill it in. And I'm just going to put that here and stretch it all the way. I'm going to set the grid this time, snap to grid. It is already set, isn't it? Okay. And we're just going to drag it all the way to the ends and make like a border. And again, rotate this. So if you don't know how to rotate, basically just go to the edge until the arrow turns into this rotating arrow, then you can press shift and that's going to rotate it, snapping to the grid. Otherwise it's going to be smooth and it doesn't leave you enough precision. Okay, so I always hold shift when I rotate and that way it snaps to 5-degree angles. All right, so let's just put it up here, drag it down. Again, you don't need to do this in such a precise manner. I just like having things lined up perfectly. Now what we could do is just check another object in here and just make it small and see if we can maybe drift around it or something along those lines. Now Blocky is quite big in this case, so I'm going to resize Blocky down to about this size, make Blocky a smaller car. And I'm also going to take the steer speed back down to about 250. Okay, now let's have a quick, oh yeah, we haven't added this solid behavior yet, so we're gonna go to behaviors, add new, and just type in solid, add that, simple as that. Let's give it a quick go, see how it acts. Bang, bang, bang. Okay, okay, so there's something wrong immediately, so let's have a look at our object and the collision box. There's definitely some weird sliding going on, so I'm not too sure what the case there is. Let's try it again. Maybe you should be disabling the movement, because let's have a look. If I crash into a straight wall, let's say something like this. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, just testing this out. Okay, so that works, but there is some sort of weird slide. Maybe I shouldn't be allowed to accelerate in this way, or is that how it's supposed to act? Really would need to put this to more of a test. The corner seems to act exactly how I would expect, just bouncing off, but it's this part here where you crash and there's some sort of weird default controls enabled. I'm just trying to see what else it could be here. I might have to I might load up the default and see what it says. There's definitely some slippage going on here. I'm not really too sure what's causing that, so I might have to do a little bit more investigation on that and then report back once I've played with it a little bit more. But I definitely a really easy way to implement this, and I'm pretty sure Because I've seen at least a couple of people make prototypes, and they're working on games that are using this behavior. But again, have never used it, so I don't know what it entails to actually get these things working correctly. But let's have a look in the event sheet and see what happens. We've got, so let's say blocky. What does it have options wise for? Compare speed is moving is enabled. Okay, so we could always disable the movement behavior on a collision. That might actually, for even a second or less than that, that's an option. Let's say we say blocky on collision with another object, and we're just gonna use the solid, and then we're just going to go blocky and see what it has now. Set actually, okay, set ignoring input. Let's see if start ignoring, add action, and we're just going to wait for like 0.25 seconds and start input again. See if that helps. Oh, okay, getting too eager here. Stopping, no, wait a second, start ignoring. No, stop ignoring. There you go. So start ignoring input and stop ignoring input. Let's see what happens then. Okay, so we'll crash. Okay, so that definitely helps some of that weird behavior that I'm experiencing, but then it also makes it a little bit less responsive, and you really need to back up from the wall. And is that how you want it to act though? I really feel like this will take a lot more experimenting to get it right, because right now I can't quite picture it, and I think I would need a real test scenario. But the one thing I wanted to show you that would be really easy to do in this case is something like we'll add a sprite and we'll just use another color, something greenish, and we're just going to chuck it over here like this. And let's say this is our grass, right? And you want the sprite to go a lot slower on grass, or the car to go a lot slower on grass than it does on land. So we could have something like blocky is overlapping another object, and we're just going to use the green one. And in this case, we're going to go set the acceleration, or even just the overall speed, set max speed to I've never done this, so just give me a little bit of time to solve this, but I think I know. Blocky dot I think it's going to be max speed. Do I have to go into the acceleration behavior? Let's just scroll through them and see what's there. No, it doesn't have the car. There you go. So blocky.car.acceleration, there you go. That's what I was looking for. So you need to go blocky.car.max speed divided by 2. So we're going to halve the speed that is set in the defaults, okay? So let's have a look at this. So normally, this is how fast blocky would be moving, right? You can go forward and back pretty quickly, right? Now, hit the grass. How come it's not working? It's not a solid. Well, let's just send it to the bottom. It's not a solid at all. Oh, it's setting the speed. It's setting the speed every time the object is touching. So every frame blocky is touching the grass. That means that the speed is continuously being set to half, and it's being set to half of the speed that was on the previous frame, which means that it then eventually ends up being basically 0. So what we need to do is, this only happens once. So while it's overlapping, okay, so we need a variable. We're going to go global variable grass, okay? And we're going to say that if not grass, okay, we're going to change this to a Boolean. And I'm also going to capitalize it because I like things being nice and organized the way I use them. So Boolean, and basically you're not on grass right now, so grass is false. So if overlapping sprite and not grass, So blocky system, compare boolean set grass. So we've got overlapping sprite 2, which is the grass, and it's not grass, or it's not touching grass, invert. I'm just going to change this just so you guys don't get confused, okay? So we're just going to call it touching grass, just so we're on the same page, because I'm thinking something and you guys might be like, what are you doing? But this is what I'm doing. So if you're overlapping the sprite 2, which is grass, and it's not touching grass, then we're going to set touching grass to true. Blocky, no, back. System, set boolean touching grass to true, and set the car speed to dead. Now, what we want to do is, if it's not overlapping the sprite, then we need to do the opposite, okay? So we're just going to copy this. If not overlapping the sprite and is touching grass, then we're going to set touching grass to false, and we're going to set blocky max speed to max speed. Let's see if this works. So as you see, if it's touching the grass and the boolean touching grass is false, then we're going to set the boolean to true, so it means it's only happening once, and the speed is going to be halved once. If we're not touching the grass and the boolean is set to touching grass, so it has been on grass before and the speed is set to half, then we're going to set the speed to the original max speed. Let's see if this works. My logic is right, but whether it's going to work is another story. Okay, let's go. Slow, and it's still slow. So is it not remembering the original speed? That's one thing. So we're going to have a quick look here. So original speed is 350. So let's say speed. I think that might be the case. I think it's just remembering the old speed that it was already at. So we're going to go speed, and we're going to set it to 350. And instead of using the max speed, we're just going to set it to this variable, okay? So we're just going to go, instead of this, we're going to go speed divided by 2, and then over here we're going to set it back to speed. So it's going to go always to 350, okay, because we're never changing this variable itself. Okay, so let's have a look if that works. So that's going fast. Okay, let's try and go on the grass. You're going slow, and back to going fast. Okay, so we speed back up, and we should hit it and go slow, and we should go back to be going fast. So that definitely works. Okay, so that's one way of making, but see that sliding, that's what I was talking about, that weird angle that you go off on when you hit the wall. That's strange to me, and I wonder what controls that and how you if you've played with this before and you have a solution to that, and you can tell me what's doing that and how to fix that particular thing. Is it the fact that I have a very square corner? Is it just the angle it's hitting the wall at? Because you seem to hit the wall and slide along, which is kind of like a weird way of acting. Do I need to set the car to go backwards, bounce off in some way? Do I need to set something like that? Not sure. So anyway, hopefully this guys helps you in some way and it shows you the possibilities. But I am going to play with this a little bit more and do some research and see if I can figure out some of these little tricks and little ins and outs. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and I will see you in the next Construct 101.